Hello, our video today is going to be on trains around the world. And in our group is Destiny, Summer, Megan, Malia, and Erica. Hope you enjoy. So to start off our video, the real question is, what is a train's purpose? So what we are going with is that a train's purpose is to transport food, transport civilians, transport raw materials, and to transport products.
I'm going to talk about the first train in America and how trains helped America prosper. The first train in America was the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. This train was a steam engine named Tom Thumb. It was developed by Peter Cooper. An interesting fact is that the first stone laid for this line was laid down by Charles Carroll, the last surviving signer of the Declaration of Independence. For me, knowing this, I think it's really interesting having the history of not only having railroads being designed, but also having one of the first railroads and the beginning of construction of it. One of the people who signed the Declaration of Independence actually helps with that, and I think that's pretty cool. On February 28, 1827, it became the first railway to transport freights with coal, chemicals, and car parts, as well as passengers. The first track in the United States was only 13 miles long. However, it caused a lot of enthusiasm when it opened in 1830. Railroads played a large part in history, especially during the development of the U.S. during the Industrial Revolution. The railroad was extended to Wheeling, Virginia, a distance of 379 miles in 1852. In the 1860s and 70s, the railroad reached Chicago and St. Louis. In 1896, it went bankrupt. After it was reorganized in 1899, it grew further, reaching Cleveland and Lake Erie in 1901. The B&O's long-distance passenger trains were discontinued in 1971 when the National Railroad Passenger Corporation, Amtrak, took over inner-city passenger service. About 1/4 of the B&O's freight revenues came from its traditional haulage of coal.
Hello, welcome to Europe. It all started due to the French Revolution and the wars happening in Europe at the time. The loss of so many horses during these wars made an alternative form of transportation necessary. In 1804, the first steam locomotive railway, which was built by the British engineer Richard Trevithick and was only used to haul iron at the time. It was not until 1825 that the success of the Stockton and Darlington Railway turned out to be the world's first public railway built in Great Britain. Railroads became crucial to Britain's economy. The trains transported iron and coal supplies from North England to the factory-filled cities of the East and West, and also transported many people from the rural areas to cities where they took jobs in factories. France joined in on the rail's expansion and built their first railway in 1828. The French did not like the idea of the country's landscapes being turned into construction sites for railroads. Germany's first railroad came in 1835. Aside from the economic benefit it gave them, the railway system assisted in German unification of connecting all the cities to one another in the country itself. By the early 1900s, all of Europe's countries had railway lines, and these lines formed a grid that connected Europe in a way that had never been connected before. The railroad era of the 19th century, railways played an important role in shaping much of Europe's economy and society during the period. Now, today, trains have expanded and advanced so much. Trains are everywhere in Europe. Some of the trains travel at high speeds across the continent to where you can get to another country within the same day, while others move slower, either by day or night, and taking its time to enjoy the scenery. Among all 33 countries in Europe, you can travel by train to get to another if needed. With the advances of technology, you can simply purchase your train pass online for tourists visiting, or they offer annual passes for the locals. Enjoy your train visits in Europe.
Hello, this is Malia Morales, and for this assignment I chose to do research over the first train that was built in India. The first train that was made and used in India is called the first passenger train. The first passenger train first ran on April 16th in 1853. It ran between Bombay's Bori Bunder Station and Thane. This train was hauled by 3 steam locomotives. The locomotives were called Sahib, Sindhu, and Sultan. The first passenger train could carry 400 people and ran on a line for 21 miles. It was also built and operated by the Great Indian Peninsula Railway. The urban rail transit systems are operated independently of Indian Railways. The first passenger train was a big train that could fit a total of 400 people to get them to where they needed to go. This created transportation for those that had jobs in different places and had no other way of getting there. The first passenger train started evolving ever since it was first built. It started off traveling as far as 21 miles and then went all the way up to 60 miles. Rail transport in India is now top 4th railroad network in the world after the United States, Russia, and China. As of September 2019, India has 638 kilometers or 396 miles of operational metro lines, and they also have 502 stations. Indian Railways is the world's largest 8th employer with more than 1.3 million employees as of March 2018.
The history of rail transport in China began in the late 19th century during the Qing dynasty. The railways in China have become one of the largest in the world. China was a little late to the game. Their railway network came after Europe, North America, India, and Japan. The reason for their late arrival was due to the lack of industrialization and the skeptical attitude of the Qing government. The first railroad to operate commercially in China opened in Shanghai in July 1876. This railroad was built by the United Kingdom without the approval of the Qing government. It was then dismantled in October 1877. The Tangsu Railway was the first railroad built by the Chinese people in 1881. This train was driven by mules and horses. The Tangsu Railway was also known as the Horse Tramway. It was then used to transport coal. China has definitely come a long way from their first railway because now they have constructed a massive high-speed railway network which has a total distance of over 15,000 miles. This makes traveling affordable, fast, and comfortable. These high-speed trains can take you to more than 150 cities in China, while also allowing you to see the beautiful scenery as you travel from city to city.
I'm going to be talking about trains in Australia. The original horse-drawn system was not keeping up with the pace of life in Australia, so on September 12, 1854, the first steam locomotive in Melbourne was created by the Melbourne and Hobsons Bay Railway Company. This travel-changing machine connected Flinders Street Station to Sandridge, which is Port Melbourne. This steam engine emerged solely on the purpose of transporting goods and people easily from the port to the city and vice versa. A steam engine was later created by Melbourne's Robertson, Martin and Smith Engineering Works in the Southern Hemisphere of Australia and is still in use today after being converted to a light railway. Englishman William Snell Chauncey was the first to design the train, but would later resign and pass on the work to Englishman James Moore, who would complete the engine on September 12th of 1854. The gauge of this steam locomotive was approximately a 1600 millimeter gauge, and this would later create other gauge sizes that were useful in making transportation faster and easier. The standard size gauge now, which was invented in the 1930s, would be a 1435 millimeter gauge and would be completed in 1955. In 1855, Robertson, Martin and Smith Engineering Works of Melbourne built the first steam engine in the Southern Hemisphere in order to meet the standards of the opening day, since work was progressively growing fast for trains. It would take about 10 minutes and 2 trains to be ran every half hour. The first ever scheduled departure was set for 12 p.m. that day, and hundreds of people lined up to take a joyride from Flinders Street Station to Sandwich. There were a lot of privately owned railways, but the Victorian government would soon take over most of it because of the financial side of it was declining. This created the Victorian Railways and networking across the states of Australia. This led to more trade opportunities, and transportation between the states and railway systems were skyrocketing all around. During World War II, there was a higher demand of larger quantities of goods, so there was a need for faster transportation and a demand in faster trains and improvement of the speed of trains. This was a faster way of transportation not only for imports but also people, and led to the creation of the suburban electric trains, which were used in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and Perth. All of the different railways have helped tremendously with job creations for those in the line of engineering, and since the means for transportation was becoming easier, as trains were becoming more technologically efficient, the economy was growing, and people were able to go from one place to another quickly than before. The railway system in Australia was rapidly progressing, and today you could be in another city within 30 minutes or less. There are now trams and subway stations that make the movement of items and people quicker and more efficient.
And in conclusion, the world as a whole has advanced the railway systems for steam locomotives to high-speed rails. The global high-speed rail network is rapidly expanding across continents worldwide and delivering fast, efficient mobility to numerous nations every day. The future of trains in this world is still expanding and growing. Let's see where the advances of technology lead us to next.